Hey,
Oh, we have to pay attention now.
how are you?
Is it okay if I
You can sit there,
squeeze
absolutely.
in? Thank you.
All right, okay. All right, it is 6:34, and I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Hamilton Master Steering Committee. Thank you, everybody. Happy, what is today, Wednesday?
12.
Nice warm day. We've got a pretty packed agenda, if I can find it. We're going to do some housekeeping stuff, talk a little bit about the reorganizing the team. You know, we had a large team, and many of you have been on this team for multiple years. They've had birthdays, right? And so you all got my note that I sent out, and with much appreciation on everything that's done. But what my goal behind that was really just to kind of get a commitment to bring this thing over the finish line, because we've had a couple of situations where we tried to meet and we didn't have a quorum, and for all sorts of different reasons. You know, great response from the team. You know, as we look, I've been working with Patrick, got Joe involved a little bit too on, you know, going back through the list of everybody who is on the team. And there were really 4 people already that had already resigned, right? And they were counted against our quorum, so they've been removed. A couple of you have expressed some interest, you know, in stepping down, and no, there's no foul or crime in doing that. You know, I appreciate that. My goal today is, I think I've got commitment from 6 of you that really want to stay. I think, Kristen, I don't know if you were questionable or not. And
No,
it's fun.
I have
I don't
2
want
to
you-
3 more meetings in me.
Okay.
If
Well,
we're really
so
sticking to that.
good segue, because really my goal today is to kind of just make sure we've right-sized the group, understand what's left to do, because there is some additional scope we're going to pull in, but I don't think it's as much a heavy lift for this team more than town staff and stuff as we look to implementation. And we'll talk a little bit about the scope of work in that piece. But if we were to do that, and Kristen, if you stay on, that's 7, which is, I think, a reasonable group. I think Tyler and Judy last time said 5 to 7, probably a good number, because if you look at where we're at, really the work to be done, and we can kind of split this from meetings once a month as well as a little bit of homework that we can, so our meetings are efficient and come in prepared to talk. You know, I think there's not a heavy lift. But again, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to either say yay or nay on that one. So with that, I think on Monday, I'm going to bring this into the selectmen meeting, the select board meeting, and I'm going to, you know, ask them to vote a new number, you know, 6 or 7, you know, for the group. You know, I don't think we have a lot of motions to be done later. So even if it's an even number, I know that's awkward, but there's not a lot of motions. It's more kind of feedback and identifying key issues and goals and editing documents and such. So I'll ask them to do that. The other thing I'd like to do tonight, because everyone knows we have this huge headache, and, you know, kudos to, you know, Marnie and Rosemary and Dana for, you know, doing the lift on a lot of the minute taken, but I'm looking to get, you know, Kristen Kasner was the vice chair of the group, you know, and she resigned as well, and she has really backed off for a while, right? So we haven't been able to do the logistics in back office. So I'd like to, you know, adopt a new vice chair this evening, if people are prepared to do that. And then I'll bring that into the select board meeting, as well as, you know, the new size of the group, 6 or 7 people. Tell them what our remaining scope is, the timeline that Tyler's going to walk us through in a little bit. And also ask, you know, and you guys will see today, there's some additional scope we'll talk about to get, because we brought this through to, you know, where's our timeline here? Basically to assessment, key issues, and vision and goals, right? So the implementation piece and just final touches and presentation back to the town was not part of our initial scope. So we've got a work order. I think it's around $31,000 to finish this through. So it will drag it to November. But again, a lot of that is interviewing staff and stuff like that. I don't know if it's as much work on our stuff, but we'll talk and really make sure everyone understands that, leaving here tonight, about exactly what that entails, what the timeline is, and what the commitment would be on that. So,
Excuse me, Bill, what did you say the number was in terms of the added scope?
added scope, I have it right here.
Let's go.
31,500. And that's going to add, you know, we'll do some key issues, a recommendation on an implementation plan. And that'll be the full completion, and something that it won't just be a binder on a shelf, but something that the town boards and departments can start to, reference as far as the guidelines and framework,
Right.
for, addressing the 8 chapters we've been talking about going forward. So I think that's the exciting part. So, the other thing, I mean, when I started, I didn't plan on being a select person, and I am. So if someone else wants to take the chair seat, I'm fine with that. I don't want to say happy, but I'm also fine with continuing and just kind of orchestrating meetings and facilitating and liaison and back, so,
I think you're trapped.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if somebody really wants to do it, I'm open, we could talk about that. Because when I talk reorganizing a group, from everything, right? So I'm fine staying. I'd like to right-size the number, we got that, and then if anybody wants to nominate or want to, be a vice chair, and again, a big part of that is going to be the minutes. And really, when I say minutes, it's, it's making sure the minutes are done for every meeting, making sure they get sent back out to the team. They have an opportunity to review the minutes, they get sent back, then they get, back to Patrick, and then we bring them in and we vote on them and adopt them, and then we start to, put them in a consent agenda or talk about them, and then just, get them loaded on the websites. So,
Bill, can I interrupt and just
Sure.
ask about, while we're on it, tonight's minutes? Do
Yes.
we want to just, somebody should do them so we don't get even farther behind?
yeah, I mean, let's logistically, I think it's easier to do that and take notes than to go back and watch.
It is, I
Definitely.
think
Show,
so,
so.
yeah.
Um,
So, if I could just interject, I had been working on the minutes that were initially from Weston and Sampson, and I'm compiling those against your list. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm happy to continue working on that.
Yeah, I would nominate you as vice chair then, if that's something you want to carry
I
forward
would
and do.
second that motion. I'm happy to do that. I feel committed
I'll
to
third
that.
that motion.
All right, so we have a first, a second, all in favor? Does anyone else want to? It sounds
I
like,
think
all
we may
right.
need a roll call vote,
Yeah.
because we're on Zoom.
Thank you for
Well,
keeping me honest.
There's nobody.
There's
There's no
nobody
one
on
on Zoom?
No.
Yeah, no. Oh, then,
So,
my
yeah.
apologies.
No, that's
No,
okay, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so unanimous?
Thank you.
So, but can you re-ask your question over to Rosemary?
What about this evening?
That's a great question, I just don't want to
Right,
answer it.
First of all, I'm willing to continue to help you with the minutes if you, but I need a little direction, just tell me what
Okay,
needs to be
yeah.
done. But this evening, it seems like we should, and I guess I'll volunteer to do it.
Thank you, Dan.
Someone should take minutes
Yep.
tonight.
Okay, and, okay, so you'll just use the agenda. Well, I'm sure
Yep, I can do it.
you'll be stellar.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And we'll see who wants to do them next time.
Bill, I have one question. Did you get the minutes that I sent you in for the last?
Yes, those are in, I think you have those as well. So I don't know that anything's gone around and we're ready to vote, and that's in the bucket.
Okay.
I'd sent everything to Patrick. Patrick, are you compiling things, or do you want, I've sort of have been starting a list, but I thought we were supposed to send them all to you. So you tell me what you'd like for me to do.
Continue to send them to me, and then I'll get them out to
Okay.
everyone.
So I'm keeping a copy, and I will send
Yeah.
them on to you.
And
Okay,
can we just
thank
have a
you.
master tracker of here are all the meetings and what's complete, so we can say, okay, we've done.
Sure.
And a lot of the older ones, I don't expect a lot of discussion or even review on. It's really just, we've captured the bulk of the meeting and what happened. They're not gonna be very detailed, as meeting minutes aren't, but we really just, making sure we put them out there so people can read them. if they so choose.
The fact is, very little happened, and we spent most of our time editing bad text that we had gotten to no avail whatsoever. So I don't think we missed very much. As a matter of fact, I think anything that we did in terms of correcting text, and that somewhere, did we ever get that corrected text back that we did for Weston and Sampson, the final surge?
We got their text back, yes.
You did, okay. So I think that really hit everything that, we
So-
talked about.
So let's commit to,
A meeting on it.
Rosemary, for next meeting, coming in, we'll have a full tracker, and I started one, so and I'll help you, but I'd like to lay out, here's the process, right, from who's gonna take it during the meeting, we're gonna get them back out within the next period of time, and then they're gonna go back for review, and then the next meeting, we're gonna approve them. So our goal should be, that when we meet in a month or the next meeting, that we've got a whole bunch of minutes just to.
So the question is, in terms of the Weston and Sampson minutes, those are kind of a done deal, I think. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's way too remote to really be, unless there's something really glaring, we could just
Yeah, no, I think
don't know.
those should maybe just as, be,
Apocryphal.
people can review
As
them. I mean,
is.
if we can put them somewhere neutral, I don't want to have approve anything without anyone, when someone saying, well, I didn't see that, but.
But
I mean,
think
those are rather apocryphal. I mean, what we were spending all that time on really was trying to bring the committee up to speed on existing conditions.
Yeah.
And, you know, now we're into the real, where's this thing gonna go? And the reality checks of what the present condition of the town is and what's feasible, given the present condition of the town. And I think that's really the most important part of the whole exercise, to tell you the truth. We just spent a horrendous amount of time going over stuff that really didn't amount to
Right.
a hill of.
That's why I thought those minutes would just be sort of perfunctory, and we won't stress about those a great deal.
No,
Agree with that.
because I think for the most part, at least when I started, there were very few motions.
Mm-hmm.
And so discussion of existing conditions, done.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So anyhow, and
Now,
this,
we should mention the community meetings that we had. We had
Right.
2 of them that were, you know, and there was a nice, I sent it around before the meeting, write-up that, you know, Tyler and team did, you know, that.
Yeah, it's
We could
good.
even put those in
yeah.
there, I don't know.
And there was one in November of '22, was it? That frigid
okay, so
day?
there's
I
3 then.
also have the summary of that, so those are 2 important meetings.
What was
are
that one
done.
about?
Pardon?
That was our first.
That was the first
Oh.
community engagement. I didn't-
Way
you know,
back.
Way back.
Oh, my
What was
God.
that? That was a blur. Was that
We had a lunch.
22 or 21?
21.
November.
Yeah, I was a
I'm doing
lunch
this.
girl.
Oh, was that 20? I think that was 22.
No, I know.
These
Patrick says it was
Oh, no, we were
21.
definitely here. in
Patrick knows
21.
these things.
I didn't write this.
Crazy how long ago that was.
Yeah.
No, I.
You're not gonna go, well, so anyway, I will have a right size number on Monday, and we've got resignations in from those who won't. There's 4 or 5 people that have rolled off. I think we have the right size now, so we've added a vice chair back, we've right-sized the team, and we've talked a little bit about the scope of work. We can talk more about that, but, you know, I think really, at this point, Tyler, let's jump into, you know, the goals and the homework that you sent out.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Congratulations to our new vice chair. So yeah, I think Bill gave a really good, accurate summary of where we're at. Well, let me start sharing my screen. I've got slides to go with all of this.
Kinda here.
I think if we could start the evening, the one word that I really can't get my head around is provide. I can understand protect and I can understand grow, whether I like it or not is something different, but provide provide just sounds like, you know, making something possible with the financing is essentially what it usually comes down to. But I'd like it just to hear a cogent definition of what provide is in this context.
Yeah, some of that got redundant with me as I was going through it, but I thought, at the end of the day, I was like, okay, we're gonna protect things we have. We're gonna grow those same things because we want those to do better, and then provide is maybe something new that we don't have.
And if we are going to grow, how are we going to grow, and in what direction, and what, you know, what is the nature of it? But provide, I mean, we can either provide land or you can provide money, and that's about it, isn't it?
You could
Well,
provide.
you can provide opportunities. You can provide,
That's
You know,
nitty-gritty.
you know,
We're
resources,
30,000 feet, so.
or, you know, part of the carbon neutral.
Oh, I see what you're
Something
doing.
big
I'm
like
with you.
that. like,
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
grow
yeah,
to
yeah.
that.
Here's a good example of providing. As the town surpluses the Winthrop School, it provides it as a development opportunity.
Okay. Okay.
Tyler, you were gonna say? Sorry.
Yeah, I think the way you phrased it, Bill, is sort of how I and the other Bear team has been conceptualizing it. You know, that provide is introducing, you know, new opportunities, grow is expanding on the advantages that the town currently has, and then protect is, you know, safeguarding the important aspects of the town that need safeguarding, basically. It is a little bit up to interpretation. You know, it's a somewhat broad framework, but I think that's a good way to think about it, at least I've found. So, okay. back to the screen. So before I go into too much specific stuff about the homework, I just wanted to sort of continue what you started, Bill, and just get everyone oriented with what we are thinking for the rest of this process, what to expect, what will be asked of you, what we'll be providing, to give you a better sense of all of that. So this timeline has been circulated around. I'm pretty sure you were reading from it, Bill. If anyone does not have it, I can resend it. So my understanding from
Excuse me, Tyler, could you resend that? I don't know if I saw that in an email.
okay, yeah, I will make sure that everyone has access to that. I'll write that down for the first thing I do after I get off this call. And Bill, the way you were talking earlier, it seems like the select board is going to take up the issue of the proposed contract extension at the next meeting, right?
Yeah, on the 17th, it's on the agenda.
Okay. That was a question we had going, where was that at? And asked and answered. So it's still hypothetical, but this is what has been proposed, and would be the like Bill said, finishing out the project. So I've tried to demarcate that on this chart with this blue line here. Everything to the left of it, that's what we're currently in phase 2. Phase 1 being, all the stuff that happened with Western and Sampson. And then phase 3 would be really focusing on the recommendations and implementation. Although Judy has built a little bit of wiggle room in there in case any of the stuff from this bleeds over. So it's going to be all done probably by November. I think, this year it's not going to bleed into next year. We got to cap this in 2023. And that's very doable. So what is there left to do in this current phase? So as you know, the big, inventory and assessment section with all the data in it, that is pretty much finalized from the last time you saw it. There were still a few outstanding straggling comments. I've been just addressing those when I've had time. We don't have a lot of time to, hem and haw over them, so I haven't, been prioritizing it, but you'll see those soon. What we really need to focus on now are the goals, the key issues, and the vision statement. So those are 3 sort of interrelated pieces of it. I have some slides on what those are to give you a better sense of what those are actually about. And some of you have heard some of this, some of you haven't. Part of my goal for this evening is to make sure everybody is on the same page with information, because some people have heard things at meetings, some people have missed meetings, some people have seen emails, some people haven't been able to see emails. Now that we've sort of got a solid roster again on the committee, I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So our task right now is to finalize the vision statement, the goals, and the key issues. So we're ready to tackle the actual meat of the recommendations and implementation plan going into the next phase of it. So what does that mean for you all? So we'll continue to have a monthly meeting. And like Bill said, we're going to have discrete homework assignments in between those. So I sent out a homework assignment on Monday. Some of you got it. Those of you who were at the last meeting back in June, like 21st, I think it was. Some of you got it then. Some of you only saw it more recently. I was holding off on sending it out to everybody until we had a better idea of who was even going to be on the committee. So some of you have had the time to, look through that carefully and get it back to me. And thank you for those of you who did that. But some of you have not had it for as long, and you'll have more time to work on it because I think I only sent it on Monday. And I'll go through what that assignment is. So for those of you who have not completed it yet, or those of you who have completed it and new thoughts are prompted, you can go back and add more. So, yeah, so for this phase, that homework assignment is really the big thing. So essentially what I've asked you to do is to generate your own goal statements for each of the elements using that protect, provide, grow statement that Jack brought up earlier. And so what we're going to do with that is once we have all the committee members' attempts at that, we're going to take them all, line them up, and sort of synthesize all your thoughts, see if we have anything else to add from our perspective as consultants going through all the data and writing the inventory and assessment sections, and come up with a draft, a single draft set of goals. And I think that from those goals, the vision statement will sort of emerge. So the goals are, what we want to accomplish, and then the vision statement is, it's like an aspirational statement of where the town is going to be. So you can see how the one follows from the other. Like the vision statement describes the town as it would be if all the goals are met, essentially, is a way to think about it. So for the goals and vision, once you complete the homework, we will generate those drafts for you to look at. And so the next task will be, look over what we did, see if you have any comments on it. Obviously, this is a much smaller ask than the, dozens of pages of the inventory and assessment you're looking at. We're talking like a few sentences per section. So this is really just look it over. Does this sound right? Did we miss anything? Do we need to tweak it a little? And then once we've done that, we're going to work on the key issues. So those are, actually, I should be going through some of these slides. So vision statement, these are also some examples from another master plan we recently worked on. So the vision statement is the overarching vision of what we want the town to be, what the end point of the plan is if all goes well. In this example, for Walpole, the town of Walpole, they decided that, one part of the vision statement was Walpole is a town that, takes care of its open spaces and recreation areas through investment and stewardship. And so a corresponding goal to that might be, related to the natural resources goal. They had to conserve and protect the town's natural environment, et cetera, et cetera. So in meeting that goal, you become a town that lives up to that vision, if that makes sense. This is sort of like the big picture stuff at like the beginning of the plan that is like the guiding principle before we get into the nitty gritty of the actual like policy implementation stuff that is part of the next phase. This is an important part of it too, because once we settle on, the big picture stuff, then we can make sure that all the wonky policy stuff is fitting into that vision. So that's really what the current homework assignment is aimed at. And then, I don't have a slide on key issues. Essentially, all right, I got some pop-ups on my computer, sorry. The key issues are just in a little more detail, pulling from all that we've seen. These are like the main things the town has to address. Like the biggest things, the biggest issues that we saw from the public engagement process, from all the research and interviews we did. And those are not by section. So the advantage of those is you flip to the key issues section, and they're not by element topic, I should say. So instead of one thing for land use, one thing for housing, one thing for economic development, et cetera, the key issues section really distills, the top key issues across the board. So, forget, giving each little section its due, ignoring all that. What are the most pressing matters that this implementation plan needs to address? That's sort of the role the key issues play. And that, again, we're going to develop a list of those based on, our perspective and all the experience we've had in town. And then you will look at those, tell us if you think we've missed anything, and have your comments on that. And again, all this combined is much shorter than the inventory and assessment sections. So those are the remaining tasks for this phase. And I think I mentioned earlier, Judy has put some wiggle room in there for, if key issues, the discussion takes a while to there's some slack to let it bleed into the next phase, if that's necessary. So then the next phase, before I talk about the next phase, does anyone want to ask any questions about any of that if something wasn't clear?
So does everybody have the Walpole example? Because it's a good one.
Yes.
It's very good.
Yep.
And then I would just throw out for, just, because as I was looking at Walpole up on the big screen, I'm like, did we overcomplicate it that we layered it with provide, grow, and, grow, what was it? Preserve, grow, provide? Is that like, because they didn't, right? They've just got a goal and they've got all the chapters.
No, but I mean, that's
And now we're
okay.
gonna layer in two.
Now, it's totally up to you. If you as the committee all agree, yeah, you kind of don't like that, you don't have to do it that way. We just thought it could be nice, since so much of the discussion has been framed around that framework, to incorporate it in that way. But I don't know. What do you all think?
I think we actually had a vote
We did.
at one of our meetings
We
where
did.
we endorsed those
that
three
framework.
simple words as sort of the guiding principles for
We did,
the
yeah, okay.
master plan.
So they're definitely good guiding principles. The question is, does each goal break out into that? Or back to Jack's earlier comment, does it get redundant, or are people clear that they are three separate areas of goals?
I do think that Emil had at one point in the new makeup of the committee may not have seen this, or even Tyler, I'm not sure if you have, but he did have a skeleton outline of the plan following that framework, and so we should probably look back at that, because that's what we voted on. It was essentially like, here's how the plan will be written using this framework. And I can't recall how we broke out those three categories within each chapter, but it's somehow in there, so we should
Look
probably
in the
look back
notes,
at
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, and maybe someone can refresh my recollection, or we can figure this out. I don't know that he had protect, grow, and provide for each element. It might have been a more
Agree. I think
town-wide.
we
Yeah, or
need
is
to-
it
we
the
need to
vision
define it,
statement
yeah.
that
Right.
says
We need to define
overall,
it.
This
just
is
like
what we
Walpole
want
wants
to
to preserve?
protect, this is what we want to
I thi-
provide,
I-
and
yeah,
this is how we
that-
want to grow. It doesn't necessarily relate to each topic, like transportation. I mean, there's only so much we can do.
I think we need to dig that latest version back up
Yeah.
and refer to it, because that's what we voted on, and so if we were.
Do you have that, Tyler, or are you familiar with what?
I'll take a look. That sounds familiar. The fact that there was a formal vote on it is news to me, and if there was, I think we need to seriously take a look and honor that, because that's a binding vote of the committee. So if I can't dig that up, I'll shoot an email to someone, to Bill or Patrick, and we can make it happen. So okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, but my recollection is that it was more global, protect,
Yes, then-
provide, grow, as opposed to each particular existing condition chapter.
And Tyler, this is Kristen Piper. I know I sent you a bunch of things when you guys first came on board, and I'm wondering
Yeah.
if it was one of those, so maybe if you search for emails for me, you might be able to find it easily.
So, and we can do this, I just did a quick email search, and I'm not 100% sure, because I'm trying to, but I have an email from Emil on August 25th, 2022, that looks to me like it has the master plan notes and master plan framework.
Okay, maybe that's.
Whether that's actually, what
latest.
the actual vote was, I don't know, but my recollection is sort of more what Marnie just said, which is that we did agree to that as a framework for doing our work. We would have to look back to whether we committed that the plan actually has to have, I don't know.
That's why minutes are so helpful.
That's
Not
why
to beat
minutes would
that
be
dead
helpful.
horse,
But
but
anyway,
yeah,
if
we
you-
can.
if anyone
we
else
need to
wants to
dig up
search
what
for it.
that actual vote was, so we know.
Yeah.
What we need to do.
Yeah.
Can you put up
I mean,
your
I guess-
framework you had? Because it sounds
Yeah.
like it's the same thing, actually. Right?
Seems similar. I mean,
You-
I don't know.
You had it up there a minute ago, right? All it did, it had the goal, and then it broke it up into the protect, grow, and provide. I thought I saw that up there.
That's from the. Yeah, this is
That,
just a
yeah.
screenshot from the homework. So, putting aside for now the previous vote because we don't have that on hand. If you don't like this format, that is okay. We can do something more like what we did for the town of Walpole. That's just sort of up to you. Yeah, the thought behind it was to, honor and incorporate that 3-word framework that predates us. But if there's a different way, the committee would rather do that, or even had already voted to do that, we can go in that direction instead. That is fine. So,
Tyler, I think we need to build this on a solid foundation, and I think if you're going to do that and have a document that is based in reality, I think that the first thing one really has to deal with is the 2 mandates that we're under from the state, and that's clearly 40B, however, whatever that number is of units that we have to take care of somehow. And the other is the MBTA, which started out as a voluntary kind of a thing, and now Andrea, if I understand, the AG is talking about it being compulsory and something we have to do. And if that, in fact, is the case, I don't know whether we've generated a number within the half-mile radius of the MBTA station now existing that might qualify as part of that housing. Do we have that figure by any chance?
I was able to get a $20,000 grant that's entirely separate from what we're doing here to hire a consultant to provide us with some scenarios and some graphics. So as soon as that gets done, that's something that I can bring to the town planning board, board of selectmen, and the public as well. So, we did submit a compliance plan to the state about a month and a half ahead of time back last winter.
I've never seen the letter,
Yeah. So we're moving along as the consultant work comes to us. But there's definitely more to do.
I just think it'd be good if we had a net figure there, and I guess this is going to generate that net figure, so that's great that that's underway.
The state is typically requiring 750 units. However, our number is somewhat less than that based on the fact that there's public property that can't be used for development purposes within that half-a-mile district. So it's like 738, something like that.
Well, of course, the other factor is that we have to coordinate that with Wenham, because Wenham likewise has a 750 unit obligation. And do we have any idea what their plan is? Does it have something to do with the Prince Estate or something like that? Do they got that under control?
They also have a consultant who's preparing some information from them. Their planning board now has a draft document that I've asked for. I haven't gotten it yet because I think it hasn't gotten through the planning board over there at this point, but it will.
So you're on top of this whole thing.
I've been working.
That's great. I figured, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so as that stuff relates to the master plan, I think where that comes in is when we're looking at the recommendations and the implementation plan. I think that's absolutely an appropriate thing to include. The town must, meet the obligations that the state has put on it. The 40B and the MBTA communities. That's where that comes in. The master plan is like the central place where all of the disparate elements get collected. So the housing obligations, the obligations, climate related, the carbon neutral pledge, all those things get compiled together in a sort of single timetable with responsible parties. We've done it a few different ways, but just some basic information like time frame, responsible parties, resources needed, we've done in one place for easy reference. And all of like the detailed stuff, gets done in, planning projects that branch out. Like Patrick said, have a specialized process to do your MBTA communities planning, but the master plan references it as an important thing that must be done over, the next year or two, if that makes sense. So that's where that comes in our process. And that's more of the next phase with the specific recommendations rather than the goals. Although it could play into the goals, like part of the housing goal could be, and to make sure that all, state obligations are met, for example, just to spitball something. But does that all make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because otherwise we lose control over our town. I mean, we're under state mandate, and we don't comply with a state mandate. They can come in on top of us with 2 feet, and that's not, there's no control at that point. We just
Jack,
waste a lot of money on lawyers.
So, can I just,
clarify about this being mandatory? Because my understanding from the legislation, and I've actually read the statute, is that it is not mandatory.
Well, Andrea said it was, that's the problem.
But
Can I
that was
ask-
advisory opinion. It
I mean,
wasn't
that
It was, the original was advisory. The original, but she said, you people better comply or else. I'm sorry, that's what she said.
Well,
She
but
can
she
say
can't-
whatever
she-
she wants, but
can
she
I just
can't change
interject?
the
Because I'm not
statute.
really, I'm not sure that this, I'm feeling like,
Yeah, we're
I
going
think
down a
we're
rabbit
not
hole.
on a topic that's
Actually,
on the agenda.
Actually, it is important, because if you figure, just listen, 750 units in Wenham, 738 here in Hamilton. What does that do to the traffic and the congestion in downtown Hamilton?
It's a big
Can I,
deal.
can I just interrupt? I actually think it's very important, but I think,
No, go ahead.
but I think when we need to discuss that, when we are discussing the housing goal, which I don't think we're not specifically discussing the housing goal right now, are we?
No, but things like the MBTA guideline, that's what we're talking about, right?
But I think it's important.
We're not here to solve and look
Right,
at that. We're gonna have to be
exactly.
aware of that, but I think we wanna be ahead of it. And when something does come to the table where it's actionable to the select board, then they can look to this and say, well, our vision and goal is to preserve open space and diversified housing, so that's diversified housing, but what's the impact, what are the key issues? And this is the framework where then they have those discussions like you're starting to have here on transportation and traffic and, what that does to the open space and
Right.
the whole open feel of the town that we're trying to preserve potentially.
Right, but I think it's important if somebody is under the impression that something is mandatory, I think it's important that we, because it will impact how this master plan goes to some degree. And I don't think that we should get off on any false assumptions. So
Yeah, no, I think
that's
it's
all.
something to clarify, because she did, it was definitely, originally, it was not mandatory. And suddenly.
Yeah, I don't think that's what our discussion
Changed
for
all
here
that
right now,
language.
though. But it's definitely on, in the housing, to provide diversified housing, and how does that impact open space, and to Patrick's point about,
Resources.
Winthrop coming back, maybe that could be a solution. I mean, there's all sorts of things. Wenham's going through the same thing. I sat with them several months ago on that. Patrick and I had a meeting, but it got canceled recently. We'll get an update on where they're at too. But I don't think that isn't a line item necessarily with the stats in our master plan.
Well, it's gotta be
Maybe it
ta-
is to
it's
tell us
gotta
when,
be-
to comply with, state and what a government agency guidelines and, but then all of a sudden, there's gonna be an impact analysis on what the will of the town is, but at some point, it gets pushed in and we don't even have a say, but we should have a guideline to say, well, this is what we wanna do, and then the town can look back if it did happen and say, well, that was outside of the guideline, but here's why, right? But it was a mandate that came down and somebody said you have to. But we're not talking about you have to at this stage. but-
That's right.
But it is going to impact the master plan.
Well, I mean, not that how it's written. I mean, I think it's gonna facilitate through, it'll be out on the table as a guideline. It'll say, well, if we do this, it's gonna trigger these things which people don't want, and then that's gonna be a discussion at that point. But I don't think we can say now, we're gonna put 750 units, period, next sentence.
So I guess maybe I wasn't fully understanding, but I guess I'm really just in a very concrete way, I'm looking at the agenda that we're on right now, and it feels to me, and maybe I'm alone in this, it feels like we sort of skipped something, and now and if we're talking about if we're talking about how to write the goal for the housing portion,
No, I think.
then I think that
you
that's
are-
fine, but if we're not, then I think this discussion is kind of just outside of
Right,
sort of the.
It's not a good use of time, right? So I think
Right.
what I thought we would do is like, make sure everyone understands the framework and kind of the provide, the grow, the provide, whatever, and then go through it. But here's where I'm like a little bit concerned is what Emil's email, which thank you for sending it, I've been going through it. I mean, are we going against, and it's not the same framework that I'm looking at, in the email back, from August of 22. That was before this kind of new group was reorganized in November, December. We haven't had that framework up. And is this that, or might somebody say, that's not what was voted on? So we got to either A, shift to this framework and everybody does the homework into that, or we have a discussion and we go to this framework. But they are a little different in my quick look on my phone.
Yeah, Emil slotted different elements under the headings of preserve,
Exactly.
protect, grow. And I think we liked that because it felt more accessible, readable, et cetera. We liked that it was a little different. But we can't we always take a new vote to
We could.
to say we're not going to do that anymore and we're going to follow our consultant's guidance if we didn't want to. Stick with this framework?
Right, I actually think it's really important to, like, if a lot of things have changed, it's been a year, a lot of things have changed, but I think that's a really important point, that if we do want to change it, should do it thoughtfully and with a formal motion and.
Yep. I mean, my recommendation, I don't know if I'm not necessarily making a motion, maybe I need to, but is because I'm sure this got sent over to you all, Tyler, at some point, but I know you got a flurry of documents, so it probably, got lost along the way, but maybe you and your team internally taking a look at it and considering it and seeing, is it a ton of work to sort of restructure the way we've been thinking about this? And if so, then I say we probably ditch it. Or if it's not, it's just a rearranging of some of the topics and the information, and it's not that complicated, then maybe we keep this because we did like it. But maybe don't make any decisions right now until Tyler has a chance to talk to Judy and team to see what their thoughts are. Because you might look at this and say, this won't work. Because Emil was writing it from his perspective, not from a expert master plan.
Actually,
Well, actually, he is.
he is.
Oh, he
He's
is?
written several
Yes,
master
he
plans.
he was a planner
Yeah.
in
Oh, that's right.
Farmington,
That's right.
Connecticut.
That's
He
right.
had
But this is very different than what most people do. So I think, he's using it an opportunity to do something
I'm
different.
looking at this outline, and I have to say, it's very
pretty general.
logical, and
It's pretty
and
general.
I think that the information that has been gathered can fit within this construct relatively easily. And
It's
very
more a way of just
commonsensical.
thinking about it rather than actually composing it around these ideas. It's just a way to structure the information.
I think it limits in some ways, though, because it only puts chapters under certain protect, not everything is in every chapter, so.
That's right, that's right.
That, to me, I mean, you guys must have had a discussion back in August, I wasn't here, but that aligned and mapped them to the grow, provide, segmentation, whereas we're taking every chapter and putting it
Yeah.
in all three.
He meant it as a general framework when because one of the criticisms that he had about a traditional master plan is it sort of truncates things and you have these orphan concepts that don't really tie together cohesively. And his plan was, and if you look at this outline, it sort of ties things together. So it was more a way of thinking about it. So when you talk about housing, some of the things that you were just talking about, it affects traffic, it affects the will of the people to keep open spaces. So it was sort of how to think about it. We didn't go into detail using each particular chapter.
Okay.
And I will just also point out that in that email, the first attachment, it's called Master Plan Notes. It does have, and now I'm remembering this, it has some guiding principles, some community discussion points, a vision, agreeing on a vision. So it has, we did a lot of this. And then a suggested draft organization of the plan. And then the second attachment is the actual framework. So I think it's worth taking a look at that document as well.
It's a third again, the population.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's a very reasonable suggestion for, me to take a, couple days and go over this with Judy and see what we think of it and how much of it we can use and offer our opinion on it. Yeah, if the committee wants to go more with that route and it's not like a massively disruptive thing, then we can certainly consider that. But having not looked at it, I think I probably did look through it like way back at the beginning, but didn't realize its importance. I probably just thought it was, we're redoing all this Western and Sampson work. That's one more thing we can just, put to the side or redo, not being aware of its significance. So now we'll take a look at it, basically.
Yeah, so I think that's a great suggestion. If you guys could circle back and maybe even get back with me and Patrick and just give us your sense of how these come together and how disruptive, it could or could not be, or what makes sense from a flow and kind of a story to tell, I guess. I do think it's probably in parallel worth all of us in the same week or whatever to go back, even in the structure and format that we have that was sent out, and fill that in, because all that can line in no matter how we write the chapters. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't want to
The
just stop and
information's
pause.
the same, it's
It
just
is
how
the
are
same.
you
All
organizing
of it's
it?
the same.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's exactly
can
what
pull-
it was
Right.
From your
listed.
goals and stuff. So, what's a reasonable time? I don't know if you had planned to, I think it'd be kind of nice to walk through one of them and let everyone see how our thought process comes together, not all of them, and what we're putting in, as bullets under each of the categories of grow, provide, and protect.
That'd be good.
Yeah, and
Just
then
like
everyone's
walk
got a
through
saying,
someone's
"Oh, I saw
submission?"
that's what we did," and then they can go in, like I did here, and I just put bullets under each of them, and I just put some notes, but I did a lot of them, and I had your notes from the last community meeting, which had it all broken up, right, which was great. I just went in and
very
saw some things other folks had told us, and then I kind of put some of my thoughts in it. I think with some more time, is a good way to do it. I don't know if anyone else has tried to do any other strategies, but made sense to me.
Yeah, I got a few homework submissions turned in over the
Maybe
course of
just
the day. I
someone
haven't had a
we can
chance to
walk
look
through
at
one
them in a
of
ton
them,
of
put it on
detail.
the
I flipped
screen,
through.
and everyone's got a,
Kind of look at the format.
yeah.
That'd be good.
So do you want to pull one up, and we'll just go through the first one is land use goal, right? And just
Yeah,
kind
sure.
of-
Does anyone want
The
to
lighting,
volunteer their work to be on screen? I could just pick one at random. But
Yeah, pick one at random.
Yeah, you could, I was gonna say, I skipped, that's the one I skipped, so.
I just did the three that I had done, the comments in the draft. for.
Okay. I mean, I have,
Toss a coin,
Yeah.
come up with one.
all right.
I was gonna say, I really love that idea of going through one. My personal preference, I wrote just to Tyler, but the land use specifically, I was kind of like, I kind of think land use sort of fits into all of them, so I had I had a real hard time with land use, but.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point to bring up, Data. I read that and filed that away. Sometimes land use can be sort of an odd, nebulous one, and sometimes we handle it in a special way. Like, I think in the past, committees have had a hard time like nailing down land use specific goals. So I think we've done, like mentioning in other sections which intersect with land use. But I think that like for as high level as the goals are, I think it, like for something for land use, it could just, just off the top of my head, like, something about like, responsible and proactive land use planning and, conservation and growth where it's appropriate, just like general land use principles like that, I think could be part of the goal. I think recommendations sometimes is where it can be hard to nail down something as being just land use. But I think for a goal, you can sort of speak about general land use principles that you want to guide the land use.
Well, interestingly, when you look
Suggestions.
at Emil's outline, he doesn't actually have anything with respect to land use until the very end, where he has as a heading, looking forward, and then it says future land use plan, and he basically is saying what you said, overview, consistency with state and regional plans, consistency with growth and management plans. So he's not talking about land use as a separate protect, provide, grow, but as a, looking forward, how do we want to use the land that we have? So I think it's to your point.
But wouldn't preserve open space fall in land use? One of our
It's
major
also
goals.
natural resources. I mean, there's so much overlap on some of these things. I think we should do our best and
Yes.
then let.
And then we can
let
align it, like we said, however
Tyler
we.
synthesize and align it.
So what,
I'd like to try, like, do one, like,
Yeah.
I think.
like what about community facilities and services? That was a good one, I think. Is there, whatever, I mean, is there one that looks pretty robust to you, or they're all good, but one you want to throw up, Tyler, we can just look at?
Let's see. So I decided to pick on Rosie because she's the vice chair now. That's one of the ones I have. So I don't know if any of these sections stand out above you. Let me just, I can pop it on the screen.
Yeah, he had said just to do bullet points.
Yeah,
so
no,
that's
I'm
what I
looking at mine.
did,
They're just
kind
very-
of
Yeah. I think that a lot of the actual like synthesis of the language we can do. I mean, if you have ideas, that's also fine. But yeah, it's more of an ideas gathering phase. So I don't know, where are we at? Natural resources. Sure, let's look at natural resources. Is this? Let me make sure this is zoomed in enough. Can everyone read that, or should I zoom in more?
Yeah, let's
No,
hear
we
it.
can see it.
Bigger, please, for
Okay.
me.
Bigger.
Bigger
Okay.
the better.
Better.
Thank you, yes.
Okay. I gotta accommodate everybody. Everyone has different eyes. So for protect, biodiversity, habitats, water sources and uses. Okay. Grow, replant trees in downtown to combat heat islands. Okay. So I think for the goal, that's a very good like recommendation, and I think we heard that a lot in the public engagement, not just from you, Rosie. I think that's a shared sentiment, so I can see that making it in there. But for the goal stage, it would be more something like, expand the presence of, native plant species throughout the town. You know what I mean? Like
more general.
a goal
Yeah.
would be to, improve this element of the town. And one strategy you could use to get there is to plant trees in downtown. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, good thought. So, but putting that there is not a waste of time because, we can go through that exercise and say, okay, what goal does this suggest? And we can put this in our back pocket for when we talk about more specific recommendations as well. So no bad ideas at this point. You're helping us generate these statements basically. And then for provide on this next page, okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Right, education regarding the benefits of trees, all those good benefits. Okay, so these are all about education. So education about the benefits of trees, priority of recycling, and decrease chemical fertilizers. So if we were to summarize all that in a sentence, it might be, provide education, awareness, and a sense of responsibility and stewardship for all aspects of our natural environment in town.
Beautiful.
Something like
Like
that.
that.
Would be maybe
Write that down, Tyler.
Oh,
Okay,
Was
but
that good?
Tyler,
This is all off the top of my head based on this. This is we write these kinds of
On
statements all the time. So it can be kind of tricky to distill everyone's ideas into like the essence of what's behind the idea. That's really what we're at in the goal stage. And like I said, don't be discouraged if we're not getting specific enough now, because that's to come. But that's is to distill it to the essence, basically, is how I would describe it at this stage. So that's basically what we're asking you to do now. So we're gonna take a look at, all of you by the end of this will, and I was thinking a 1 week deadline, because some of you finished, like I said, some of you were not able to have this as early as some of the folks who finished. Like Rosie has had this since June 21st, because I handed her a paper copy at that meeting. But some of you did not have the opportunity to get that, so you obviously haven't had as much time to work on it. So I was thinking a week from today, having one of these from every committee member, and then like I said, synthesize it all into a nicely fully written draft set of goals that you can then look at and say, did we do a good job of capturing, the essence of what this should be?
Yeah, but Tyler, up in the protect part, you had water sources. And
Correct.
we need to go beyond protection of water sources because we're never going to grow without an augmentation of water sources. In fact, so you've introduced the idea there under protection, but then there's nothing under grow that takes that to some sort of next step. And that's a critical ingredient to the whole shooting match here. So I'm not quite following where these tie together.
Again, these are just an example of, one person's ideas. We would, workshop a little bit and try to figure out where each element fits best. But, you are right that some things will, touch different areas, like, water sources. Yeah, you want to grow it. You could also say that, water sources are something you want to provide. So recognizing that, the edges are a little fuzzy, but where does it fit the best and best, conveys the issue. So what we really want to say is, we need to ensure, clean drinking water for the town for the years to come. And the best place for it is, the location where we can best convey that need, if that makes sense. So there's some workshopping and finessing it, and we'll do that based on your ideas, and you can tell us whether we did a good job with that. And then obviously when we get to the recommendations, there will be more specific ones about, if we're using the example of water quality, exactly how to do that.
But where it gets even more complicated, though, is that if you're protecting water sources, which is critical, because we are the water source for Manchester, for example. So that's good to protect that water source. We also, for environmental purposes, obviously the Ipswich River, but then the augmentation, where are you going to put the augmentation part on the water, which is a critical ingredient to any future growth for almost everything else?
Is that grow?
It's grow, but is it in this section or is it in a
I think it's
different
in natural
section?
resources, but I mean, put it wherever, and then as a group, we'll come back and we may kind of move things around.
Or is
but
it facilities? Maybe it's under
exactly.
facilities.
Right, I
But
think,
it's not.
I
Yeah, my instinct would
Right,
maybe
it's
be
a
to
service
put it
we
under
provide.
facilities. But again, these are the,
right.
you put it where you think it goes,
Right.
on the sheet, send it to us. We'll look at everybody's opinions and we'll do the best at distilling those and doing what we think is best. Then you'll have a chance to say, well, hold on now, we'd rather have it here and we can have that discussion.
And I can't even remember, but one I did, I wrote something and then I put in parentheses, I'm not sure it really,
I did the same
it's not,
thing.
and I think that's important to just get it all out. And then Tyler's gonna, like he said, synthesize it, and then we'll have something.
Yeah, and that's
to
fine. That's
say.
fine to
Yeah.
put, I don't know, or maybe this belongs somewhere else and we'll take a look at it and give it our best guess. And, then, you'll also obviously have your chance to weigh in on that too. So I think just get the ideas out and we'll try to refine them as best we can.
I tried to do that, so let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's all
We'll
out
see.
there in this thing, but what I did was awful. I mean, I'm not proud of it, but I got the issues on it.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Jack. No one's going to read that text besides us. We're going to make something that sounds and reads very nicely.
So
we don't
I think
have-
we have a plan.
Yep.
You're going to take Emmo's the initial motion on the format, have a discussion, come back and we'll talk about, an impact analysis, or is the flow better, and we'll come back as a group because right now I think we're kind of voted in aligning to that format. In the meantime, everyone's going to go through the homework, finish it up, get it back to Tyler by Wednesday, the 19th, right? I mean, I have one, I'd send it to you now, but since you're giving us another week, I'll just push, I thought we were gonna come and just talk as a group about it, so I'm sorry I didn't forward it to you, but this was helpful just in doing the flow. So it's gonna be choppy. I mean, mine was like yours, and not that yours was choppy, but I think, it could be in different areas, to your point, Jack. But you guys will kind of synthesize it, bring it together, and then we'll kind of all decide what area it should be in.
I like the process. I mean, just that one we did.
Yep.
And like you said, pulling from the notes from the second community meeting, which is very broad, say net.
Yep.
And you've got this smaller group to kind of bubble it up to a slightly filtered set. And I think just each of us having 2 or 3 bullets even, or even 1 bullet per item, it adds up times a multiple of us and quickly gets the ideas on the, on the page.
Agreed.
So I don't think any of us has to write the, complete authoritative version, which
Right.
makes it a lot easier for us. We just throw, the ideas that we've collected in our efforts.
Tyler's
Yeah,
demonstrated a facility with words here. He can pull this all together. I mean, he does,
give him
he writes
some
master
inputs.
plans for a living.
That's right. We do the stream of consciousness, and he does the finished product.
Right,
Yeah, well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
right.
That's the idea.
You've got the language set for master plans down.
Yeah, that is something I've got some experience in. So, leave it to us. We'll do our best in that regard. And, you're always free to beat us up on it if, if you don't like what we give. So, yeah, I think a week is totally fine. Again, some of you don't need that time, but the point of giving that extra time is to let everyone catch up and be on the same time for schedule going forward.
Yeah, we'll
I'm
make
trying to
that a
think
no
if
later.
there's anything
and
else I
then-
wanted to talk
And then
about.
is there a reasonable amount of time after that? You can bring it all together and push it back so that while we're even not in a meeting, we can kind of get a sense on all the things in the different buckets, and we can start thinking about how we shift and move things if needed.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and that also led me to the thought of establishing a regular meeting schedule going forward. Because I was thinking, oh, will that be ready in time for the August meeting? Wait, do we know when the August meeting is going to be? That's my thought process. So I think that we had discussed, at least some of us, maybe it was just with Patrick and Bill, doing a, nth Wednesday of every month type of thing.
Yeah,
This is
think
the.
it was the
I've put in my
second
calendar the
Wednesday.
second
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So that is, okay, that's established. I wasn't sure if we formally established that.
I'm not sure if it's formal, but.
Yeah, not formal, but I think that's what we kind of left, and I put
Okay.
into the note that I sent to everyone. Does that work for everybody? Any
Okay.
conflicts, or?
Yeah, I've got it in my
Okay.
schedule
Yeah.
now too,
So
so.
let's
But
commit
we're
to that.
adding October, November, I see. Because when that email came out, it just said
Right.
2 or
Yeah,
3.
because this
July, August, September.
wasn't really
Yeah.
finalized.
Well,
yet.
once in October, November, that is going to be that phase 3 part.
Yes.
Right. I think that's
That the select board
next
is
on
going to
the
vote
agenda.
on next week.
Yes. But if approved, we should add the second.
List,
So even if
because
you
I'm
wanna
not
drop
getting some of these emails.
What you've said today, I mean.
I
think
didn't
you're
get
good
any email
history and
about
bringing it in, but
scheduling.
honestly.
Do you know what they are? They're in the email chain. They're not.
Tyler, I have another question too, if that's appropriate. Have you looked back at what Judy said back in 2006, were her suggestions? Reread those a couple times, and she had a lot of very good suggestions, many of which have never been implemented. And that would be sort of an interesting exercise. I didn't know whether you were going to have something in this that sort of looked back and then indicated where it went, or whether it was no longer, whether it was moot, or, that had some
Yeah.
efficacy now.
Yeah, I brought that up last meeting, that we should at least, acknowledge that we're publishing a version that's 10 years after a previous version.
Right.
Some way or another, and not
Yeah.
operate in a void.
18 years or something like
Was it
that.
18?
Well,
Yeah, it's been a lot. I
2006
think it was
to
it was 2003.
It's not
even.
18, it's
Maybe.
15 or whatever.
Maybe later than that. But yeah, so that's a good point. Where that, excuse me, I think where that will come in the most is when we get to the implementation section and recommendations. One thing we commonly will task the committee to do once we get thinking on that is to open back up the previous master plan, if there is one. In your case, you've got one, and to comb through, see what the recommendations were then, and see, what was done and what still needs to be done. And if there were recommendations that didn't get done, is it something worth bringing forward, or is it something that's now, outdated and of the past? That is something we will be asking you to do in the early days of phase 3. That's your biggest homework assignment in phase 3, because Bill touched on this, but a lot of what we're going to be doing in that is going back and talking with staff, the people who, manage all the technical details on a day-to-day basis, and, working with them more to develop these, and then bringing them to you for review, rather than you generating them necessarily. Obviously, if you have suggestions of things to add, once you see that, that's great and part of what you're here for. But it's going to be much more of, do that initial homework assignment, and then we do a bunch of stuff in the background and, produce something for you to comb through and review and comment on.
Well, in 5 years, we want to be able to get up and say to the Board of Selectmen, here's this list, what have you done? Bill will still be around, see?
On tropical island. Yeah, no, like when Scott Mattern came in and he spoke about the HTC, right? And he said that was in the original master plan and a lot's been
Right.
done downtown. So we should call that out somehow to say we've made progress in that area. So.
Yep.
But that's part of phase 3, I guess you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the most effective place to do that is in those recommendations, because, in the plan, the recommendations are, this is what you got to do next. So it makes sense to, if we're looking back at the previous plan, to look at those and say, what did we do? So that's where that comes in. And it is something we do always try to do. It is a valuable exercise.
And to that point, I think, Patrick, you at one point did something to that effect. I remember seeing it. You had gone through the different recommendations and the implementations that were set forth in the 2004 master plan and gave some indication of what was accomplished and what was not done.
Correct.
Yeah, you laid a list out. That's right. I
Don't
remember.
reinvent
Okay.
the wheel.
That's great. So I think then the assignment would be to look at the document Patrick generated and say, okay, out of these things that weren't done, are there any that are of high importance to carry forward? Are there any, based on what was and was not done, are there any implications for the current plan of what our recommendations will be going forward, basically? So we can skip the part of was it done or not, because, Patrick, knowing as he does what goes on in the town, has done it, so that's great.
Tyler, just, this is probably too specific of a question for this discussion, but I will ask it very quickly and hope it's a yes or no. One thing we talked about very early on as a committee was forming some sort of master plan implementation committee or oversight committee that would hold the various boards and committees accountable for actually referring to the master plan and implementing the recommendations. Is that something you typically do?
Yes, if a town has the capacity and the volunteer strength to make that happen, that is a great way to ensure the plan actually gets implemented. And
Okay.
we could, once we get to that point, there's some examples of where that's been successful we could talk about. So yes is the answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's part of phase 3, right, on the implementation, and you guys will sit with every department head probably and staff, and
Yep.
that'll be part of the discussion, right? So, and then the follow-up, of course.
Sounds like Kristen wants to be the enforcer.
I do.
Oh, well, there you go. That's important.
Can't commit myself to anything else yet.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, I think we've touched on everything I wanted to talk with you about. I will resend the schedule to make sure you all have that. And I will also make sure you all have these slides. They're very similar to the June slides that I didn't end up using at that meeting, but I'll just send these anyway because there's some minor differences and additions. If there's any other materials you lack, let me know. I'll try to dig them up. I will be reviewing the outline skeleton, whatever it is from email. And getting back to Bill and Patrick on that, as well as starting to compile the homework responses we do have and awaiting those of you who want to take the extra week.
If I could clarify, so our next meeting will be a month from now, but you'd like us to email you our homework assignment no later than a week from now?
Yes, and then so that way, by the time you meet again, we will have had plenty of time to, take that homework and synthesize it into the product, and we can discuss it then and have a nice, productive discussion.
Yeah, because it can go back a couple times probably, right?
And-
So, yeah, like if you get it, good, and if you need more time, I'd rather have a good product, but I think that's fair. And then, if you can turn it back to us in a week, and then maybe we're providing some stuff, so by the time we're sitting here on the 12th, we're if that's the date.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that seems like too slow of a pace. If we give you one iteration
Right.
within a week,
The only
and wait
concern
3
I
more
have-
weeks to see a synthesis of that, which probably results in another homework assignment to do it again, it could take
Right.
months.
I was just gonna say, it's really important, though, if we're gonna do that, you have to be really cautious about open meeting law, like and not to call you out, Jack, but if you send it, you can't send it to everybody, because that opens up a discussion. So we can send it to Tyler,
Right,
And
individuals
Patrick.
can't.
right, or to Patrick, but once you
That's fair.
I don't know how to, that process, in other words, if Tyler were to send it all back to us and then we start going back and forth,
But we can't go back and forth, that's all I'm gonna do. I think he can consolidate, send it back, and then we just have a product we can review as notes for our next meeting, but nobody
Right.
respond to it.
right, you have to respond on your own.
Yeah, and let's put that in the header, not
Yes.
to be, please do not reply, or
Right.
reply only to, just so we have it in there as a note.
Right.
So, because we
Yep.
do run afoul potentially, once we start moving things around. Because the other thing that could come into play, and the only pause I have on a whole month, is what if we're changing ponies, so to speak, into Emil's format, for lack of a title? Is it gonna be an easy shift from what we're already doing, or should we start thinking about moving our stuff into that if Tyler or somebody came back to us and said, hey, no, we can do this, shift it? Is that something we could just do before our next meeting, or is that something we would talk
That-
about in our next
That'd be
meeting?
good, if we're gonna do that, have it do one of these things according to whichever format we're gonna do it.
We have to decide that soon. I mean, I think shifting the format,
Yeah, they're gonna
if it's
get,
gonna, that should be decided sooner than later.
yeah, because that's critical.
And
I
then,
kind of like our format, but this was voted on, so.
Well, and I think we're in agreement that if it's too heavy of a lift, we make a new motion and we move forward with a different format. But if it's easy to just, because again, it's the same information, it's just structured differently, formatted differently, then perhaps we stick with it. But we're waiting to hear from you, Tyler, right? Whether or not it's heavy lift.
Yeah,
or
the
doable.
Barrett team will do some brainstorming around it. I mean, this week, I guess. I mean, yeah, I totally agree. The sooner we get this nailed down, because the format and structure of the document is really going to affect how we write these, goals and vision, because that is so tied to the, the skeleton of it. So I'm in full agreement with that we should get it figured out.
and Tyler, do you have a draft now? I mean, is that what you just pulled up on the screen, that you already have written a draft of this thing, or what was that you were showing?
No, that was just an example, and I picked at random Rosie's. But no, we're going to wait till we have everybody's to work on the draft.
Okay. Because I think at that point, we should get the draft, and then we'll know where you're putting everything, and we can work off of that, make corrections or whatever.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on the homework assignment and kind of the next steps leading to our next meeting on that format? You'll hear from us before then, obviously, on, any format changes or lifts or recommendations or the impact of a potential change at this stage. You'll hear, I'm bringing adding the scope of work, the key issues, the implementation plan, which we'll get into in phase 3, I guess. We'll have an answer on that on Monday, along with just making sure the reorganization is official, and we'll get that all onto the website, so.
I'm sorry, just for the minutes, I want to make sure, so the select board is going to vote on Monday, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep. Does everyone here have a copy of the new scope of work, or we can send that around too? Maybe include it, or I'll send it, either way.
Send it, please.
Okay, I'll send this.
Okay. So you'll send that, and I'll send around the schedule.
Okay. So that was item 4 on the agenda, committee business, review, vote on minutes, which we don't have ready, but Rosemary and I'll work with you and Patrick too. We'll just kind of come back and we'll have some minutes to approve, and you'll get them ahead of that too during that same 4-week window. You're gonna start seeing some minutes come, and if you have any tweaks, you can reply back and change them. Otherwise, they'll come back around to be voted on at our next meeting. And we'll have a tracker that'll show, here's all the meetings we've had, here are the minutes that have been approved.
Right.
And Rosemary's gonna own that for us. Congratulations. And we have our future meeting date, and we've all agreed that we're gonna meet on the second Wednesday of each month going forward. And I don't know if there'll be a need to kind of have a
6:30.
drop meeting in. I don't, the plan is to not and try to work things through, but, potentially, I think with the smaller size group, we can get a quorum easily and, either people can Zoom in, that's perfectly acceptable, or miss a meeting if they have a conflict.
At 6:30 is working for everybody?
Is this the 7?
Yep,
This,
we're all,
this is
yeah.
up, okay.
Is that right? We're all here?
Is that, do we have 7? 1, 2, yes.
Yeah, The dates and times are in my calendar, it's just, I don't always control my exact schedule the week
Yeah, no,
of.
I get that, me
Right.
too, so,
So, but we're talking August 9th, 6:30, that's what we're saying?
yes.
Okay.
I think one thing would help me, I like the increase in email communication that I'm seeing over the last few weeks, month. There's a lot of secondary material that's being circulated and shared. That's great. I think it would help me that if there's any email, and we've all committed to doing homework more, to be better prepared and more efficient. I'm all for that. So, I think about 20% of the emails are actually action items or, versus informational. If we could just, whoever's sending something that has a requirement for many of us of an action, a deliverable, it just puts somewhere at the top, action required. Would help just keep it.
With a deadline.
Agreed,
like that.
With a
agreed.
clear deadline, because
You
we've
can
had issues
remember.
with that in the past.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
Any
sounds
other-
all right to me.
Any new business, anything we should think about to bring back to our next meeting? Any topics we're missing or things we can help tighten up?
I think we're rolling. You want a motion?
I'll take a motion then.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is, what, 7?